Vladimir Putin is a former KGB member turned politician who rose to become one of the most powerful men in the world and one of the youngest Russian heads of state to grace the Kremlin. In his days as a Cold War spy, he worked as a translator at Dresden, then East Germany, until the fall of the Berlin Wall on November 9, 1989. And in a straightforward sequence of events from Joseph Stalin's KGB code book, Putin made the decision to ensure there is evidence left of his tenure in Dresden when he burned KGB files in his office. After the Iron Curtain fell across Europe, Putin returned to Leningrad, where he regrouped with his former KGB associates and set out on a course of action that would bring them into the political realm. Putin was a quick study, and he rose to become deputy chief of staff to Boris Yeltsin's presidency in 1997. In 1998, Yeltsin appointed Putin director of the FSB Federal Security Service, which filled the security and intelligence void left by the disbanded KGB. By this time, many former KGB staff had risen to prominent political positions, and Putin would ensure this was a policy that would continue. Within 1 year, he became the 33rd Prime Minister of Russia, and on the 7th of May 2000 he assumed the most powerful role in the Russian Federation as the second president. He spent 2 terms as president before he stepped down in 2008 when Dmitry Medvedev became president. But Putin returned to the presidency in 2012 with his popularity with the Russian people intact. As his power grip got stronger, his position on the international stage got stronger, with Russia taking a more active role in various crises, especially in the Middle East. Like all true statesmen when he speaks, it has a more global meaning, and he is also good for one-liners. So here's a compilation of the best Vladimir Putin quotes. Enjoy. History proves that all dictatorships, all authoritarian forms of government are transient. Only democratic systems are not transient. Only democratic systems are not transient. Whatever the shortcomings, mankind has not devised anything superior. Russia is a part of European culture. Therefore, it is with difficulty that I imagine NATO as an enemy. Our aims are absolutely clear. They are a high living standard in the country and a secure, free and comfortable life. To pay more is the easy way. In fact, the solution possibilities to the problem are many. Terrorism has once again shown it is prepared deliberately to stop at nothing in creating human victims. An end must be put to this. As never before, it is vital to unite forces of the entire world community against terror. I see that not everyone in the West has understood that the Soviet Union has disappeared from the political map of the world, and that a new country has emerged with new humanist and ideological principles at the foundation of its existence. Indeed, Russia and the U.S. were allies during the tragic conflicts of the Second and the First World Wars, which allows us to think there's something objectively bringing us together in difficult times, and I believe it has to do with geopolitical interests and also has a moral component. Stalin is the most popular figure in all of Russia. Stalinism is linked with a cult of personality and massive violations of the law with repression and camps. There is nothing like that in Russia, and I hope will never again be. Our society, including the liberals, must understand that there must be order. For Russia, there is not, and there may not be another political option, but democracy. However, Russian democracy is not at all the realization of standards imposed on us from outside. We need to use the United Nations Security Council and believe that preserving law and order in today's complex and turbulent world is one of the few ways to keep international relations from sliding into chaos. The law is still the law, and we must follow it whether we like it or not. In 1995, Russia virtually gave Chechnya de facto statehood and independence, even though de jure it didn't recognize Chechnya as an independent state. And I would like to emphasize strongly that Russia withdrew all of its troops. We moved the prosecutors, we moved all the police, dismantled all the courts, completely, 100%. Russia needs a strong state power and must have it, but I am not calling for totalitarianism. No references to the need to fight terror can be an argument for restricting human rights. The democratic choice Russian people made in the early 90s is final. We shall fight against them, throw them in prisons, and destroy them. We don't need a weakened government, but a strong government that would take responsibility for the rights of the individual and care for the society as a whole. Russia does not want confrontation of any kind, and we will not take part in any kind of holy alliance. The ability to compromise is not a diplomatic politeness toward a partner, but rather taking into account and respecting your partner's legitimate interests. Radicals can be found in any environment. I'm eternally grateful to fate and the citizens of Russia that they've trusted me to be the head of the Russian government. Terrorists are always a threat to someone. If we'll be scared of them, it means they have won. President Obama hasn't been elected by the American people in order to be pleasant to Russia. No one doubts that poison gas was used in Syria, but there's every reason to believe it was used not by the Syrian army, but by opposition forces to provoke intervention by their powerful foreign patrons who would be siding with the fundamentalists. I love the Russian classics very much, the Russian classical literature, but I also read modern literature. As far as Russian literature is concerned, I am very fond of Tolstoy and Chekhov, and I also enjoy reading Gogol very much. Russia is opposed to the proliferation of mass destruction weapons, including nuclear weapons. And in this context, we call upon our Iranian friends to abandon the uranium enrichment program. I read papers, try to watch news programs on television, but, as a rule, recorded. During the day I have no time for that, so I watch something taped. As for the newspapers, I try to get through them every day. Additionally, of course, I look through news bulletins. Economic activity is moving from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. Russia has a certain natural advantage because it also borders the Pacific Ocean. Anyone who doesn't regret the passing of the Soviet Union has no heart. Anyone who wants it restored has no brains. Nobody and nothing will stop Russia on the road to strengthening democracy and ensuring human rights and freedoms. The path towards a free society has not been simple. There are tragic and glorious pages in our history. You must obey the law always, not only when they grab you by your special place. Russia does not have in its possession any trustworthy data that supports the existence of nuclear weapons or any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and we have not received any such information from our partners as yet. Whoever does not miss the Soviet Union has no heart. Whoever wants it back has no brain. I believe that the presidential term should be limited. If one looks at the map of the world, it's difficult to find Iraq, and one would think it rather easy to subdue such a small country. I'm sure corruption in Chechnya is minimal. I am the wealthiest man, not just in Europe, but in the whole world. I collect emotions. I am wealthy in that the people of Russia have twice entrusted me with the leadership of a great nation such as Russia. I believe that is my greatest wealth. The United Nations founders understood that decisions affecting war and peace should happen only by consensus and with America's consent. The veto by Security Council permanent members was enshrined in the United Nations Charter. The profound wisdom of this has underpinned the stability of international relations for decades. Chechnya is part and parcel of the Russian Federation. I go to the gym. I swim daily, and from time to time I meet with friends and do extracurricular stuff. It's a historical phenomenon that in 250 years, a nation could move from a colony into the most prosperous nation of the world and the leader of the world. It is indeed an achievement, a tribute to the talent of the American nation, the American people, and an optimal political and economic system. Journalism, as concerns collecting information, differs little, if at all, from intelligence work. In my judgment, a journalist's job is very interesting. Russia will not soon become, if it ever becomes, a second copy of the United States or England. Her liberal values have deep historic roots. Nobody should pin their hopes on a miracle. The strengthening of our statehood is, at times, deliberately interpreted as authoritarianism. I think the American people should express their preferences, and we'll accept their choice. Yes, life in Chechnya so far looks more like a life after a natural disaster. Political activities in Russia should be as transparent as possible. Financing political activities from abroad is something the state should keep an eye on. I believe the U.S. already understands and will understand more and more that only a strong Russia will respond to the genuine interest of the United States. Iraq is a small but very proud nation. Those who fight corruption should be clean themselves. How can a bureaucrat or a politician be trusted if he says loud words for the sake of Russia's good while trying to take his funds, his money abroad? No one wants the United Nations to suffer the fate of the League of Nations, which collapsed because it lacked real leverage. This is possible if influential countries bypass the United Nations and take military action without Security Council authorization. The Chechnya problem is a centuries-old problem. The thing is that today, fundamentalists and terrorists are exploiting those centuries-old problems to accomplish their own objectives that have nothing to do whatsoever with the interest of Chechnya. I would prefer to abandon the terminology of the past. Superpower is something which we used during the Cold War time. Why use it now? I think every person should have some faith inside him and his heart. What matters is not an external display of this faith, but the inner state of the soul. My English is very bad. I was brought up in a very ordinary family, in fact a worker's family. Both my father and mother were ordinary citizens. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our video.